Hi, welcome to Straight Talk. I want to welcome all of our new viewers from our new cities and let you know that what we're doing with Straight Talk is trying to get the word out, educate the people in this country about the opiate epidemic, the drug problem, the drinking problem, and try to get people to understand that there is hope, that we can help people. And we try to let you know how to do that. So today on Straight Talk, we're going to talk about the issue of women getting treatment, what happens after treatment. We talk a lot about aftercare. How do we prevent people from relapsing? And we're very, very fortunate, very, very lucky to have a young woman joining me, Jenny Paul, who is a recovering addict, and proud to say it at this point. You've been clean 2 years, over 2 years.
Yes, sir.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
To that, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. You have been clean now for 2 years, but you obviously were involved in a lot of stuff,
Yes.
a lot of bad stuff.
Yes.
Okay? Tell me a little bit about your story, how you got involved with drugs, and then we'll get a little deeper involved.
Okay, so growing up, I mean, my whole family is addicts,
Really?
pretty much. My mom, my dad, my brother, he's 3 years older than me, so pretty close in age, but I, looked up to him. They just continued to use in front of me, and I kind of, they say some people either follow their parents or they go the opposite direction, and my brother was the one that followed them, and for a very long time, I did everything to avoid being an addict. Like, I went to college, I joined the military, I was just, in school, I was like a perfect straight A student because, I yearned for that attention in other places other than at home. And so I just did everything I could to avoid being my parents. And then because of childhood trauma, obviously, a lot of it comes down to self-esteem. And I got in a relationship with a guy who I thought that I loved. And it wasn't, but, a question, you want to try it? And all the times, growing up, like, I'll never do that, I'll never do that. And then as soon as he asked me, it was like, this guy had this control over me, and it just took one time. And the first time I did it, everything starts with the prescription drugs. I feel like a lot of stories end that way and then end with heroin. And gracefully enough, I never used a needle, and I feel like that kind of helped me find my way into recovery. But I do think I would have been out there a lot longer. Things would have got rough. But yeah, growing up was just pretty rough, and I just had to do everything to not do it, but I did.
So you avoided it for most of your life.
Yeah.
Because you saw your parents and you said, I'm not going to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to college and you joined the service,
Mm-hmm.
the military.
Yes.
And so you stayed away for...
Until, I'm 26 now. I've been clean I only was using for about a year, so until I was 22 years old, pretty much.
Isn't that that's amazing.
Yeah, even going through college, I was like not the partier. I mean, I drank, of course, whenever your friends do, but it was never like excessive. But I think that I always had that addict mentality, using imagination like a lot, fantasizing about things that, that a lot of addicts talk about. We felt that way growing up, just never feeling like I was in place because I was always the outsider in my family. And it was like as soon as somebody said, do you want to try this? And I did it, and I was like, this is why they're doing it. Now I understand it. Like, I finally felt like a part of, I guess is what you can say. And that's why it was off to the races as soon as I started.
And they say about heredity
Mm-hmm.
with addiction,
Yeah.
that it does pass through. You just stayed away from it long enough.
Yeah.
If you would have started when you were a teenager,
it would have ended the same story. Yeah, exactly. I do believe that the whole nature versus nurture, that as much as I would say that growing up, probably led into why I used, I do believe that there is some type of biological, like, chemical there that was planted, and the seed was there, and it was just a matter of me opening it up and starting. So it was self-will all the way up until the first time I picked up, and then it was not in my control from there on.
and you actually, when you hooked up with this guy, the first thing he gives you is pills?
Well, we had a bunch of friends. They all smoked weed and did all that kind of stuff, and the friends that we were with at the time had the pills, and that's how it started.
So you started doing probably Oxycontin pills, something like
Percocet.
that? Percocet pills. Mm-hmm. And then that led to heroin.
Yeah, I actually dabbled into the Percocet a little bit before I joined the military, but of course, I didn't think, I mean, it wasn't a problem in my mind at the time. It was like, you know, occasional, on the weekends, like to have fun, and then I felt myself slipping and I knew it, and because I lived in survival mode my whole life, I felt like I got to do something, and I was like, I got it. I joined the military, and I know it sounds so crazy, but I just needed to get away because no matter what, wherever I was going, it was there. If I went home, if I was with friends, like I surrounded myself with these people, but that's where it was everywhere. And so I joined the military, and then when I came home, the same guy, you know, I was in the reserves, I still am, but when I came home, it was the same situation, and at this point he was using heroin, and it was cheaper, and everyone just says, you know, it's the same thing, it's the same thing, and so I did it.
So you joined the military, you joined the reserves.
Mm-hmm. So I was on active duty like status for my training and stuff for about 9 months, and then when I came home, it was like the day I came home.
So while you were in the military, you didn't use?
While I was away.
Yeah.
Because
it was only when you got home.
Yeah.
Only when you got home with this guy that you started using.
Yeah, and I was still in the reserves, honestly still fighting it, military drill weekends, somehow just never getting a urine. I mean, I never got a urinalysis, I just got really lucky.
Wow, you really have been lucky, for sure, for sure. But when you got home, you got around this guy, that did it. That did it. I mean, here you were using heroin when this fentanyl is killing people. Did you see anybody? Did you know anybody who was overdosing at that point?
I think when you're in active addiction, you don't understand. Now that I'm in recovery, I couldn't tell you how many people, I mean, in the rooms, how many people, like immediate people, have lost their lives. But when you're in active addiction, you don't truly understand it. Nothing is going to stop you.
Isn't it almost kind of like the reverse, that when you hear about a more powerful drug, the addicts will go to it rather than away from it because it's not going to hurt me?
Yeah. I always said I would never do heroin because I saw it take my family down, but when they said it was the same thing, you know, and when I was using, I don't feel like fentanyl was like super aware of people. I mean, I think there was one time that I got fentanyl, and pretty sure that I didn't overdose because I wasn't, you know, needed to be resuscitated or anything, but I do think that I
came close.
Blacked out.
Yeah, you might have been before. All right, well, hang in there. You're doing a great job.
Thank
you so much for being here. It's so brave of you to tell your story, really is. And we're going to continue because I want to hear about the good stuff of what you're doing with your life.
Thank you.
We're talking with Jenny Paul, who is a recovering addict. We're hearing her story, amazing story, and we're going to hear more from her. So it's real important that we all pay attention because this could happen to anybody. This addiction, this opiate problem does not discriminate. It's happening everywhere in this country. So stay with us. We're going to hear more from Jenny when we come back.
Who helps a hero? Who tells the story of their scars? The freedom and safety of so many, of us all, is earned by the sacrifices of so few. Who helps a hero? We all do. The Gary Sinise Foundation works to support America's defenders and strengthen their families through entertainment, the construction of smart homes for our wounded heroes, and by inspiring and educating others to also support the veterans within their own communities. We enjoy the benefits of their sacrifice and service each day. Now it's time we serve them. Find out how you can help our heroes at GarySiniseFoundation.org. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, we can always do a little more.
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you're beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. Our whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
That's
Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking with Jenny Paul, who is a recovering addict, has an unbelievable story. She grew up with parents who were addicts, a brother who was an addict, stayed off of drugs for many, many years, but then eventually gave in and got hooked on heroin, much like so many people out there. And so we're learning a lot from Jenny. And Jenny, again, thank you for doing this. It's a great service.
Of course.
I think a lot of people are going to watch this and hopefully do what you did, which is get some help.
I hope.
You know, now you were going through it. Here you were doing heroin and Percocet, and you were pretty deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
What made you eventually get to that point where, because here was this boyfriend who had a lot of power over you.
Mm-hmm.
What made you say, hey, I've got to take care of myself here?
So, much like I was explaining, I, was in the military, and I honestly was living life like a double life, like nobody would even know. I was working 2 jobs in the Army Reserves. I had my own place with my boyfriend. I had my own car, and he had a daughter, and it seemed like everything was great on the outside. And then all it took was for me to get pulled over one time. And when I got pulled over, I didn't think I was going to get searched. Of course, we all think that we're going to be the,
Right.
invisible ones that don't get in trouble. And I got searched, and honestly, like, the drugs were put in my purse and they weren't even mine, but I wasn't even fighting it. And I remember just being in the back of the cop car, and I couldn't even cry. And it was almost like my first surrender. A lot of people go through their different surrender moments, and I just felt like I can't even cry because this is what I need. Like, this is what I want. And I was like, finally, like, somebody got me in trouble. This is, how else was I going to stop? Because life was just going. Like, I was working, I was doing all these things, and it seemed great. And so when I got pulled over, I got, my phone taken and everything. And then the Carroll County State's Attorney's Office actually has like a liaison who they directed me right to him. They're like, obviously they could tell, being in the reserves, because they had to know I was in the military, that they had options for me. And I spoke with the liaison, and he let me know that there was a program called the Early Intervention Program. And in Carroll County, that's for anybody who hasn't previously been charged with a drug charge. And it was the opportunity to work in this year-long program and go to meetings and do whatever I needed to do in order for my charge to be now-prossed, and then stat docketed and eventually be now-prossed. And that's what I did. And so I got into treatment. He got me directly into Maryland Addiction Recovery Center. And of course, I followed the process for a little bit in outpatient, and I was still using. But it takes a little time, because I wasn't aware of recovery. All I knew was addiction all around me. And so I was kind of like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. And so eventually, after being in there for a while, and I was fighting the process, still using, and it was like guilt and shame, just built up of guilt and shame. And finally, I just surrendered, and I let them know, I'm using. I mean, I don't know if I let them know. They probably caught me, let's be honest. But
So you were going to
thank
treatment. God. You get busted.
Mm-hmm.
You get a chance to get help, and you go in there and you're still using.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you weren't.
I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
The typical,
It's important to say, though, because when people listen and they hear about treatment and treatment doesn't work, or treatment, whatever people think about treatment, it does work.
It does.
But at the same time, it's hard to go in there. Here you are, a young woman in the military, right? Going into a place where they're all telling you what to do.
Well, that's easy enough, because the military.
Yeah, you're the military. But they're not telling you to use drugs.
Right.
But it had to be a whole change for you.
It was. I think I fought the process because I felt like I had control over it. And even though treatment does work, it works if you let it work. That's what I truly believe, that I wasn't ready for it to work at first. I wanted to get rid of all my legal issues, but I didn't know how to function like with my feelings and my emotions without drugs, because finally I was like okay with myself when I started using. And so it took a little bit for me to understand like I can live life and be happy without drugs. And so eventually, you know, I decided to go inpatient because I was doing outpatient. It wasn't enough for me. And I honestly don't think that a 28-day treatment would have worked for me. And thank God Maryland Addiction Recovery Center is like a long-term treatment. And so I went inpatient.
Now, when you say that, that's another good point. I'm hitting these points because I want the people out there to understand about treatment and the levels of treatment. You went into outpatient, meaning you slept somewhere else.
So I go home and then I just go to treatment 3 nights a week for 3 hours.
Okay. And that wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough.
So then you went into residential. Where
Residential.
you stay there.
And like everything on the outside is shut off. You don't have your phone. Like you just focus on yourself.
No old
and your
friends,
recovery.
no old drug stuff. It's just you.
Exactly.
And other people who were like you.
Yes.
Trying to get clean. And then the traditional 28-day, that wasn't enough either. So you got to stay longer.
I told them at first, because it is long-term treatment, but I told them I'll give you 30 days. Because I was fighting the process. I was like, I'm just going to give you 30 days.
Right.
And after 30 days, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to stay here. Like I don't feel like I've really worked on, you know, all my childhood trauma. And so I was like, okay, I'll give you another 30 days. And I stayed as long as it took, because that's what I needed, because my addiction stemmed from, you know, all of this childhood stuff that I hadn't worked through, and just taking the drugs away wasn't going to be enough. I needed to like do intensive therapy and talk with people and understand like how to live life normally.
But isn't that when you talk about treatment, you're getting to the root cause? Like we can give medicines to people to get them off certain drugs or whatever, but it doesn't really get to the real cause of why.
Exactly.
And you were willing to invest that time.
Yes.
And you had a place to do it.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people out there may not have that kind of facility to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I was
that.
very fortunate, very fortunate. I know I'm so grateful for being able to stay at Maryland Addiction Recovery Center for so long, because it's not afforded. But there are ways, like if you go to short-term treatment for 28 days, you just have to get connected, you know, with a 12-step fellowship, or follow up with whoever you can afterwards, and just stay in the program, stay connected with people, and just reach your hand up and say you don't know what to do, ask for help. And that's what I had to do. And I never asked for help my whole life, because I did everything on my own. So it was very humbling for me.
Yeah, from your story, you had no choice.
Yeah.
Because no one was going to help you.
Exactly. I had
you
to
had
do
to
it.
help yourself. So I think this probably hit at the right time for you to make that commitment to say, yeah, I'm going to help myself.
Yeah.
And thank God you had somebody. So
Thank God.
we're going to talk about what you're doing now, the good stuff, where you are, and about what people need to do after treatment. So please stay one more segment, and we really appreciate you being here. Jenny Paul, an amazing person, sharing her story with us. When we come back to Straight Talk, we're going to hear about what Jenny's doing now to help other people, which ultimately helps herself. So stay with us. We're coming right back to Straight Talk.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Find fun activities to do, like boating and biking, or camping and hiking, plus much more. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org. Don't allow your weight to threaten your health or control your future. Excess weight, or obesity, can cause emotional and physical health risks. But you can take control. The Your Weight Matters campaign offers free resources and tips to help you measure and understand your weight. Take the Your Weight Matters Challenge. The free toolkit prepares you to speak with a healthcare provider about your weight. Your weight does matter. Take the challenge and take control today.
Hi, welcome back to Straight Talk. We're talking about the opiate epidemic, addiction, that it doesn't discriminate, can happen to anybody. And with us has been Jenny Paul, who's an amazing young woman who battled her addiction, her family's addiction, and got herself into treatment and realized she needed to be long-term treatment, which is amazing. And now, Jenny, you know, you went through your rehab and you really put a lot of work into it. Like you said, you get out of it what you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you really decided you wanted to do this. Now, when you finish, now how does that work when you say, I stayed long-term until when? Till you feel good enough to leave or you want to leave? How's that work?
So it obviously works with however your clinician team feels like you're working on your recovery, working on yourself and where you are in your life. And because I'm in the military, my situation was a little bit different in that, you know, I did have stability. I had, you know, my Army career, and I actually had to leave treatment to do my drill weekend, which was a little unusual, but you know, I'm part of the government, so that's what had to happen. And so I stayed for 2.5 months. I know their program is a lot longer than that, but I enrolled right back into outpatient through them, so I stayed.
Right.
And at this point, you change your hours and how much you go. They determine like 5 days a week, 4 days a week, however much you need to go. And I went to a halfway house, and that was crucial for me because, you know, my home life was exactly what I was trying to avoid, and I thought that I was just gonna take the drugs away and go back home and do the same thing. Like, I'm gonna just be with the same guy and, you know, live in the same house and work the same jobs, and it just wasn't reality, because when they say that you have to change everything, they mean that you have to change everything. And so I you know, humbled myself. I went into a halfway house, and I, you know, continued to work in the job that I was working. I got another job, and then I was still in the Army Reserves, and I was just doing life. And then what helps me is that before you leave Maryland Addiction Recovery Center, you have to be involved in like a 12-step fellowship and go to meetings, and they give you the opportunity to work with people and go to outside meetings with a sponsor or network and get those phone numbers, because I'm not going to reach out if you don't make me. And so that's what needed to happen. And so I reached out. And so when I left the halfway house, I had all these women who were in my circle. I had a network. I was already starting to work the steps with the sponsor. And that's what I do today. I'm continuing. Like you had mentioned, I just celebrated 2 years clean in Narcotics Anonymous. And thank God for, you know, the fellowship, because without the women, like I mean, I just had a daughter. She's 8 months old now.
Oh,
I've been through a
congratulations.
couple of things in recovery, and if it wasn't for the 12-step fellowship, you know, I don't know if I would have stayed clean, but I have to just stay connected and trust my higher power.
And you say you have a group of women.
Mm-hmm. That's
You know,
crucial.
It's hard for women to get into treatment and stay in treatment. There's so many barriers, whether it's a child or whether it's staying on the streets or
Yes.
image, like you said before. It's difficult.
It is. I feel like when it comes to women, I think the children probably is the biggest barrier.
Yeah.
There are not enough treatment centers that accept women, and even in treatment centers where the woman can learn how to be a mother again, like have their children there. I know there are a couple of programs, you know, where I'm from that do that, but it's not enough. And when you're leaving them, then they have to deal with like CPS and all the issues. And then of course their mentality is like, I just want my children back. They want, you know, so it's definitely a barrier, and a lot more men are in treatment than women. But it's crucial because they need to be there for their children.
Right. But you have this support
Yes.
that's out there, and you're working in the field. You're
Yes.
helping other people.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
It's challenging. You know, us addicts can be selfish and everything else, and we are entitled and we want everything, and you just kind of have to work with people where they are and guide them. And you know, when they say attraction rather than promotion, like they mean it, because I can give you all my experience, strength, and hope, but until you see like where my life was and how I am now, you're really not going to understand. And so it's awesome for me. It helps me so much because I can go back to where I came from. Because when you get some clean time under your belt, you start to realize like this is normal life, this is how we live life, and things get caught up and you forget how you got here. And the biggest thing for me is working with addicts and understanding like I was just like them. As much as I want to claim that I'm doing so good now and I'm, you know, in this job, but I was just like them. And that's very important for me to remind myself because it helps me and it helps me help them.
I was just going to say, I imagine it helps them as much as it helps you at this point.
Yeah,
or
when
vice
you
versa.
can tell people
I mean,
that you've been there.
Yeah, it's important.
Trust.
And you're open about it and you're sharing that.
Yes.
And you're helping a lot of different, especially women. I would imagine that you probably have an amazing ability to reach out. I mean, you got some story.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story.
Thank you.
And so where do you go from here? What's your next step?
So
what do you want to do?
I am going to continue in my career job, hopefully move further and do more things. Obviously, I'm staying in the fellowship one day at a time. My goal is, you know, to keep showing people that you can continue to stay clean. I've been clean since the first day that I actually, you know, surrendered because I don't count the whole IOP thing, but a relapse doesn't have to be a part of your story. That's important. And from here, I'm just going to continue to work with my higher power, connect with my women in the program, stay humble, and help other people because that's the only way I can help myself.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people, as we go through this epidemic, I think the 12-step program's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
Because normally
there's other ways to get
people
clean.
think of it as Alcoholics Anonymous, but Narcotics Anonymous is also there.
It is.
And very powerful, and it's the same concept and does the same work.
Exactly.
It's just, you know, a different kind of a drug. But don't you feel that's critical?
It is. They always say there's plenty of different ways to get clean, but for me, the only thing that works is the 12-step fellowship. And if I wasn't in it, I would probably just be continuing to do what I did before, but be miserable. Because I think you can stay clean without a fellowship, without people surrounding you and helping you, but ultimately, like, you're probably going to stay miserable.
Well, Jenny Paul, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your child.
Thank you.
On your being clean and what you're doing to give back. You're
Thank
an
you.
inspiration, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, and I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.
Great. Again, today on Straight Talk, we just can't talk enough about helping people who have an addiction, whether it's opiates or alcohol or any other drug, that we get to people, get them help, get them into treatment. As you heard from Jenny, it works. It really does work. But you got to make that move. We got to get people the help that they need. So I want to thank Jenny for being here to share her story. I want to thank all of you out there for watching Straight Talk. And again, if you or someone you care about has a problem with substance abuse, please get them help. Thanks for watching Straight Talk. We'll see you next time.